So guys, nowadays there are countless different platforms that we investors can have in our arsenal. We've got various portfolio trackers, stock analysis tools, spreadsheets, various social media sites, which, it's good to have all these different options, but for investors who are looking for a one and done platform, something that really does it all, the only name that really comes to mind, at least for me, is Seeking Alpha. And if I had to get rid of everything and only keep one platform, it'd be this one. Over the last 4.5 years that I've been investing, Seeking Alpha has been with me every step of the way. I mean, you can go back to some of my earliest videos and still see me using it there. And to say that Seeking Alpha has been helpful in my development as an investor would be just a terrible understatement. Being able to have such a great resource has been an absolute game changer for me. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite features on Seeking Alpha, and I'll show you how I use it throughout my investing process. Before we get into it though, I want to give a huge shout out to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring this video. I mean, like I said, this platform has made such a big difference for me over the years. I've learned so much from it, and so I'm excited to show you around the platform. And throughout the video, guys, we'll be looking at Seeking Alpha Premium, which is one of their paid tiers, which you can actually try out for free. There is a link to it in the description or in the pinned comment. With that link, you'll be able to try out Seeking Alpha Premium free for 7 days, and if you end up loving it, which is pretty hard not to do, you'll also score $25 off of your annual subscription. And guys, I do want to give you a quick heads up that Seeking Alpha is about to raise their prices, okay? Starting October 1st, it's going to go from $239 to $299 for an annual subscription. So if you ever wanted to check out Seeking Alpha Premium, now is the time to do it. And once again, you can find the link to the 7-day trial and $25 off in the description or in the pinned comment. So guys, when it comes to researching stocks, for me, it all starts here on Seeking Alpha. And you can learn a lot about a stock just from scrolling down the summary page, which is what we're looking at here. So in this instance, guys, I've searched a stock for us here. We're just gonna rock with Visa, which, as you know, is one of my favorite companies. I think this is like the gold standard of stock, so I think it's perfect for this demonstration. And as we scroll down this page, we're gonna see a ton of different information. I mean, we've got the share price performance right here. We've got some quick stats right here, like the earnings per share, the PE ratio, the 52-week range. A lot of helpful stuff, and if we continue to scroll down even more, we'll see this right here, which in my opinion is probably the best feature here on Seeking Alpha. We've got some user-submitted analyses, we've got some news articles, and we're going to circle back to all of this later on in the video, but like I said, this is probably my favorite feature here on Seeking Alpha, and this is definitely where I spend most of my time. But anyway, let's continue scrolling down even more past this seasonality, and we're going to find ourselves looking at the analyst ratings here, so we can see what Seeking Alpha analysts are rating the company as, whether it's a buy, a hold, or a sell, or even a strong buy or a strong sell. In the case of Visa, I'm actually surprised to see one strong sell here. I wonder what that's about. But anyway, we'll also see the Wall Street analyst ratings, and it's a similar deal. We got strong buy, hold, all the way down to strong sell. And then we've got some little blurbs here that go into a bit more detail on the bull and bear case of the company that we're looking at. So we can see there's a few people pretty bullish here on Visa for a handful of different reasons. And we do have one bear here who says Visa is suffering from a setback in a 20-year lawsuit over interchange fees. But anyway, I think this is a really helpful section overall, just to get a quick glance of what people are saying about the company. So you can kind of see both sides, which is obviously important. But then continuing on, guys, just scrolling down a little more, we'll find ourselves at the company profile here, which for me is step number one when I'm looking at a new company. The first thing that I want to try and figure out is whether or not I even understand this company. Can I figure out and wrap my head around how this company makes money and what they even do? And the company profile here is a good place to go to get a sense of that. And then if we scroll down even more, we'll be able to get a quick view on things like the revenue and the earnings per share, and as well as some other growth metrics here. We'll get a sense of some of the valuation metrics, the profitability metrics like the gross profit margin or the net income margin. And we can scroll down even more and see some more things like the dividend stats. So all of this is really good if you just want a quick view on what's going on with the company financially. With that said though, Seeking Alpha also has dedicated pages for all of these things, and I find myself personally just going more to those specific pages and looking a bit more in depth on that information than I do looking at the summary page. And those are super easy to find too. If you just scroll all the way back up to the top, you'll see all these different tabs right here, and that's how you get to the different sections when doing your stock research. Now for me, guys, once I've determined whether or not I actually understand a company and think it looks interesting, the next step in the process is to go through the financials. And at the very least, if I'm just going through this, my very first time, just doing a quick scan to get a sense of what's going on with the company financially, I want to look at the revenue, I want to look at the earnings per share, I want to look at the debt, and I want to look at the free cash flow. And by doing so, what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not this company is growing. Are they increasing their sales? Are they increasing their profits? How's the debt situation? Do they have a lot of debt, or do they even have any at all? I'm trying to determine how profitable the company is, and I'm trying to see if it can continue paying and growing the dividend. Those are very important things. And really the only place to get all of this information at a deep level is here in the financial statements. And Seeking Alpha gives you access to all three major financial statements: the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. And if you're going to be investing in individual companies, you're going to want to learn how to look at these things because they're essential. And when I first started investing, I honestly didn't know how to look at these at all. I was coming into this very fresh. I had no experience, and Seeking Alpha actually made it very easy to learn. It's been a really great resource to learn how to read these financial statements. And one thing they do to really help you out and really help you learn how to look at these things is if you hover over any of these metrics, it'll give you a definition and a breakdown of how to look at it and what it is. Like we just, hovered over revenue and it told us exactly what it is. We can come down to like gross profit right here and it'll tell us the same thing. And so like I said, coming into this, with no experience looking at this stuff and not really knowing what a lot of this stuff is, it was pretty helpful just to be able to, hover my mouse over something and come to understand what it was. And another perk to Seeking Alpha, as we can see here, they give you 10 years of financial statements. So it really gives you a lot of information and a lot of data to gauge how things are trending over time for a company. And if we scroll down even more, one of the other perks to Seeking Alpha, this is one of my favorite things about looking at the financial statements here on the platform, is they have these supplemental items here, like the revenue per share, the earnings per share, the shares outstanding. If we scroll down even more, we've got the dividend per share, the payout ratio, things like this. Now on the topic of some of those metrics, particularly the dividend ones, like the dividend per share and the payout ratio, you'll be able to get so much deeper into the weeds on all that stuff by visiting the dedicated dividend section here on Seeking Alpha. For us dividend investors, that's going to be a particularly important page, and you'll be spending a lot of time there for sure. And taking a look at that, guys, if we just click over to the dividend section right here, it's going to bring us to this page, which is the dividend scorecard. And if we scroll down just a little bit, we'll find this really helpful dividend summary, which is going to give us some insight into the key dividend metrics for the company. Now, in the case of Visa, we're looking at the dividend yield, which is not super high for Visa, 0.7%. We're looking at the payout ratio right here, 21.5%. So that's really nice. Visa has a really solid 5-year dividend growth rate. That's important. And I like to see this right here. If we're dealing with a company that has a low dividend yield, like Visa, below 1%, I personally think it's mandatory to see a dividend growth rate like this. So this is exactly what you want to see, near 16%. And with this dividend summary, you also get the dividend growth history right here. In Visa's case, they've been growing this thing for the last 15 years. Now, in addition to that, part of this dividend summary also includes some of the important dividend dates, like the ex-dividend date, the payout date, the record date, declare date, and they also tell you the dividend frequency, so you know how often you'll be getting those payments, whether it's quarterly or monthly or annually, whatever it is, you can find that information right here. Now, if we scroll back up to the top, guys, it doesn't stop here with the dividend summary. We also have these various submenus that dive a bit deeper into the dividend stats. We can look deeper into the dividend yield, the dividend growth, dividend safety, dividend history, and dividend estimates. Now, why don't we click into the dividend yield just to get a taste of what something like this might look like. So on this page, we'll get much more insight specifically, obviously, into the dividend yield. We can see the average dividend yield over the last 4 years. We can also see it right here. This is how I look at it, the dividend yield average over the last 5 years. So in the case of Visa, the 5-year average yield is 0.7%, and it also tells us where the current yield is, or the forward yield, in relation to the 5-year average. So right now, Visa has a 0.72% dividend yield, which is 3.6% above the company's 5-year average. And with that, we can also take a look at the yield on cost over various time periods, whether it's just 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years. So you can kind of guesstimate what your yield on cost might be over these different time periods. And in my own stock research process, I refer to this a lot, specifically this right here. I find it really helpful to know where the current yield is in relation to the company's 5-year average. Because if you're looking at a company whose dividend yield is way above the 5-year average, that's a good sign that it could potentially be undervalued. So that's definitely something you'll want to keep an eye on. And this makes it very easy to do so. But anyway, now jumping over to the next submenu, the dividend growth page right here. This obviously is going to give you much more insight into the company's dividend growth. Now, I personally look at this page primarily to look at the dividend CAGRs right here. And in general, right here, I actually think it's good that they're all relatively similar to one another. It means that across all of these time periods, the dividend growth has been consistent. But anyway, now jumping over to the dividend safety page right here, this page is incredibly important because as a dividend investor, the worst thing you can possibly experience is a dividend cut. And this page right here gives you some really good information to help you determine how safe a company's dividend actually is. And for me, the two most important metrics when it comes to dividend safety are this right here, which is going to be the normal payout ratio or the earnings payout ratio, which tells us how much of the company's earnings they are allocating towards the dividend. How much net income are they paying out in the form of dividends? And also the cash flow payout ratio right here, the free cash flow payout ratio, which is very similar, but tells us how much of the company's free cash flow they're paying out in dividends. Both of these are very important to know how well covered the dividend is. Now, putting together all of these features that we've looked at so far, you can use Seeking Alpha to determine what a company is and how it makes money. You can determine whether or not the company is growing, how it's doing financially, and what's going on with the dividend. And from all of this, you should at least have a good sense of whether or not a company is interesting to you and whether or not it's something that you'd like to explore further. And from here, what I like to do is now see what other people are saying about the company and what other people think about the company. And that's going to bring us to what I think is the most impactful perk and most impactful feature of Seeking Alpha, and that's going to be the news and analysis section. And we briefly scrolled by this earlier in the video, but truth be told, I think this alone, having all this analysis and having all the news right here is worth paying for the premium. And the news side of things here is, pretty straightforward. Here you can keep up with all of the company's latest happenings, whether it's a dividend cut or, if a company announces an abrupt change in CEOs, you can find out about it here in Seeking Alpha. And you'll also get full access to a company's SEC filing. So every annual report and every quarterly report can be accessed here within the platform. And you can also listen to all of the quarterly earnings calls as well as other conferences, which is huge. And what's even better than that, guys, is being able to read all of the different user submitted articles on the platform. I read multiple articles here every day and have done so pretty much ever since I started investing, and I can't emphasize how much I've learned and how many new companies I've discovered over the years just through reading these articles. And many of the writers on here are highly credentialed and experienced as well. For example, you can find in-depth analyses on REITs by Brad Thomas, who has over 30 years of real estate investing experience. He's a big one here on the platform, and he's just one of the many outstanding authors that you'll find putting out regular content here on Seeking Alpha. So like I said, I think the articles alone are worth paying for, and if you automatically sync your portfolio here on Seeking Alpha, which is another one of the premium perks, the news and analyses for the companies you own will automatically populate on your portfolio page. So it's incredibly easy to stay up to date and in the loop with all of your holdings. And the same happens with any custom watch list you build. If you want to keep your eyes on some companies that you don't yet own, you can build a custom watch list, and you can also set price targets so you know when stocks on your watch list come into buying range. But in a nutshell, guys, that's how I use Seeking Alpha throughout my investing process. Like I said, it's probably the best all-in-one platform out there. At least in my experience, that's been the case. And it would be a shame to not at least try out Seeking Alpha Premium free for 7 days. I mean, it's free, risk-free as well. So you might as well. And once again, there's a link to that in the description or in the pinned comment. And speaking of mistakes, in this next video right over here, I'm telling you about 7 painful ones that I have made so far in the few short years that I've been investing. Hopefully by watching this video, you'll be able to learn vicariously through me and not make these same mistakes, which is definitely going to save you some frustration. It's definitely going to save you some money. So click right over here to learn about those, and I'll see you in the next one.